Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I'm Tessa, and I'm joined by the lovely Cy.
Good morning, good morning.
You know, it's been a holiday week with Thanksgiving this week, and it's been a World Cup series, and there's all these things on my mind, as people try to make the best Thanksgiving for their family because they want everything to be perfect. Or I'm watching World Cup and you hear the announcer say, why didn't that guy take the shot? Why did he pass it? And I keep thinking, it's like everyone needs permission to do something that either makes themselves better or promotes themselves, or everything that we talk about on every one of our podcasts, right? Like, we all know that we should be giving ourselves a break or giving ourselves more self-care, and that we don't need to be doing all this stuff for other people, and that we should do more to build ourselves up because that's how we are able to help more people. But it really hit me hard that I think we all need to give ourselves permission to do that.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
myself included, right? Like,
yeah.
Overperforming to, make everything perfect for the family for the holidays, and it's gonna be great regardless of whether or not I have, dusted the baseboards, right?
Yes, 100%.
And I'm wondering, what can we do to help other people, or what's the challenge for ourselves to give ourselves permission? Is it that we need to identify it in others when they're paused, right? Like, we all have friends and we give them advice and they know it's the right advice to take, but it's as though they needed someone else to tell them, or they needed someone else to give them permission to indulge in the self-care to fill up their cup so they can perform better, or whatever it might be. How did we get to the point where we just needed permission to do it, even though we know that's what we need to be doing?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind are all the invisible forces, all the pressures that where are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from inside?
Right, like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I guess start with something that's, like, probably near and dear to everybody when you're dealing with a family gathering like that. Everything has to be perfect kind of attitude, whether you're the guest or the host, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't press the buttons or to have that conversation because I just don't want to deal with it, or the times that we swallow our tongues because we don't want to speak up when we should be speaking up. Like, all those things that society probably is part of the reason that we don't give ourselves permission. And then I think of it, a lot of it might be that we were probably told at some point in time, right? Like, especially as women, like, don't speak up too much. Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Don't make men feel inferior. Don't make other people feel inferior.
Yeah, or just, the shushing. I think I'm
Oh,
triggered by shushing.
yes.
As you were saying that, I'm just thinking, like, people don't explicitly say those things sometimes, but
Yeah.
you get the point. They make their point one way or another, especially with, like, for me, it's more like elders, it's like you just, you're taught as a child to keep your place, and that, adults are the ones speaking in the room, like, and it's just so interesting to me because I'm thinking, you're trying to raise these children to be functioning adults, and you're just teaching them that they're different than adults in so many fundamental ways that it's just interesting because you're really just helping people internalize an inferiority. Really, like, that's what's happening. Yeah.
And it
And I think it
sticks.
happens for yeah, exactly, absolutely, absolutely, because you don't know that as a child, you're not like, "Oh, well, this is really happening." because I'm, this is it and this will be different. I mean, sometimes you do to a certain extent where you're like, well, when I'm older, I'm gonna be the person who, like you get some of that, but truthfully, I mean, mostly you just internalize it as like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supposed to talk. I'm not supposed to be the one taking up the air in the room. I'm not supposed to challenge these people. And it's just interesting the way that it manifests, throughout life. Because then, there are people who just didn't get that. and and they're the ones who take up all the space and then you're paving the way for them to do it. It's really interesting. And there's so many other forces in there. I love this topic because it it is the season, isn't it?
It
It is the season.
is.
It is the season of, perfection and of of posting. I think that social media, it just adds another layer of pressure onto it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everything has to look picture perfect on top of everything actually going perfectly well. And even if it doesn't, you still want to like create this narrative that it did somehow. You want to salvage it somehow. So I think it's very interesting, especially because, the holidays are supposed to be a time when people like come together, enjoy themselves. And and I know it's not easy. Like the reality is just generally it's not easy even before social media, but I just feel like now even more so than before, it feels performative almost, like people have a extra layer of pressure to show something, right? To have something to show for, to present to the outside world. And it really worries me mostly that people are not just being in the moment
You
and they're
know,
missing it. Yeah.
this leads me to a confession. I have started this new tradition of having my former sister-in-law and niece over for dinner once a month. And I am normally the person who is probably a little more fastidious than one needs to be to exist. And I have taken it that I am going to leave one thing out of place. So, like, I intentionally make sure that
Oh,
something
wow.
doesn't get done so that I
Oh,
don't
that's
appear to be the fastidious one. But I also realize it's kind of my way of forcing myself to give up the ghost and not be, I don't even know if that's the right expression. I should not be using idioms as a English as a second language person. But anyway, I force myself not to leave something out of place as a way of me trying to break the habit of being
mm,
everything has to look ideal
mm, I
in
like
my
that.
mind.
Yeah.
And it's slowly working, right? Like it really takes the pressure off knowing that you can allow yourself that one, like, oh, the laundry's still in the laundry basket and on the bed and it's not folded, or
Hmm.
I didn't dust, or whatever it might be. Allow myself that imperfection. And it's worked. Like I realized that, hey, everything's going to be fine and we can all enjoy ourselves if I didn't do the one thing. And maybe soon I might allow myself not to do the two things.
Hmm. Interesting. And then you have to grapple with it, basically. You
Mm,
have to get
pretty
over it.
much. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, there's so many different, opportunities. And there are people who have to take pictures throughout the whole thing, for example. Or, they have to get that shot and this and that. Like I just wonder like if people are really enjoying themselves honestly or not. And so I'm glad that you have been self-reflective enough to know like this is standing in my way of really, just moving on and enjoying this moment. And then you've done something about it to make sure that it doesn't and that you challenge yourself. And I think that's probably the most important thing because it's probably something different for each of us, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
we have multiple issues, but it's probably something different for each of us. And the most important thing might be to self reflect and recognize what is holding you back. Like, are you having this conversation with somebody and really listening to what they're saying and
Hmm.
really, having a true conversation, or are you thinking about the laundry on the bed? Or are you
Right.
thinking about, your next Instagram picture or something else? Like what is really holding you back from being present? I think that that is it seems like that's related to this
Absolutely.
part. Yeah. And so I think maybe it's self-reflection that helps, and just noticing in the moment, what is holding you back from really engaging in this visit, in this conversation, in this moment.
It makes me wonder, are people choosing not to be in the moment, or are people distracting themselves because
Mm.
it keeps them out of the moment,
Mhm.
and that is their safe place to not be there,
Oh yeah.
especially in challenging times, like being around family members who could be triggers or
Mhm.
who have a history of, yeah, setting things on fire, figuratively speaking.
Right. 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 No, I could see that. That's a great point. And yeah, perhaps you're right, because we all have our coping mechanisms, right? Like
Right.
we've all developed a way to survive. We're all survivors. We're all here surviving the trauma of our past. That's what's going on. And I really think it seems one of the biggest secrets to life is finding a way to deal with your past trauma and move on in life. Even if you carry it with you, making it part of who you are today, and not letting it own you or control
Yeah,
you. And, a lot of us are still on that journey. I think everyone probably are in different parts of that journey. So I think that's a good, yeah, I like that point, because you're having to come to this space. That's another thing that's interesting about holidays. It's a very like predetermined thing that says, this is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're
right.
supposed to spend the holidays with. This is what it's
Hmm.
supposed to look like. And speaking of narratives, it feels like, whose narrative are we following, first of all?
Absolutely.
And yeah, and then what narrative are we trying to, preserve and just show that like we're being good and doing what society expects of us. I think it's so interesting. And I've learned so much from, the queer community, and seeing the beauty of, having a chosen family and doing things differently. And sometimes it's not a choice, but it's out of necessity. But either way, it's just interesting to see communities, forging their own path and making their own norms, and not having to lay prey to convention.
And I think that goes back to the same issue from the beginning of, can we give ourselves permission to not follow society's norms, right? Like,
Mhm.
I know I needed permission to distance myself from my family. I needed to give myself permission
Mm. Yeah.
because that was the healthy thing for me to do mentally.
Mhm.
And it takes a lot, right? Even when you
Yeah.
know that it's the right choice to make, whether it is distancing yourself from family or speaking up at a meeting at work or taking more time for self-care to, they all require you to take that step to say, okay, I can do this even if it's not what society thinks or I thought was right or so and so told me was right or wrong or
Mhm.
have you. But
Mhm.
especially when it comes to family, it's like we do need permission to not fall prey to the societal norms that you should be spending them with your family. And everybody's family is like, I don't know, some television family where everybody gets along. And let's face it, that's not reality.
It never has been, never will be.
No, 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 no.
But at the same time, if that is what you're doing, and even if it's, a chosen family or different folks, I mean, there's always there might be something there that you're worried about, or even upset about, or scared of, or
Mhm.
just anxious about. And so, coming into the holidays is really interesting, interesting time. And also, like, we're not even, we're also thinking maybe there are people who don't have families too. Like, that's
Yeah,
another, um a whole other thing to think about. But at the same time, we're at a place where, folks do get hung up on the way it's supposed to look, the way it's supposed to be. And how can we challenge ourselves to push out of that, and to maybe get comfortable in the uncomfortable. That's what I love about your story. You are not comfortable with this situation with, with having something out of place, right? But you
Correct.
know that about yourself, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, let me get comfortable with it instead of like
Yeah.
going to your, go to, which is let me just make everything perfect. You're going to a place of discomfort, and I love that so much. I'm so obsessed with that because that is where people grow. Like that's I just I think it's one of those other it must be one of those other secrets of life. It's like embrace the uncomfortable, go for it, try to get uncomfortable, find a place where you're pushing yourself into unknown territory, and that is where you always grow. That's the only place you grow.
Yeah, and I will safely say that the first few times it was not, like, I've made it
Not
through the
easy.
event, but I had some
Mhm.
people over, but then afterwards, it's like, "I'm going to obsessively organize this drawer because I need to be in control for a second." And once the door shuts, but, it's gotten better, and I don't have that
Yeah,
obsessive
yeah,
need afterwards anymore, and it
yeah.
really, really has helped, right? Like,
Well,
it took away that self-imposed stress that I had
yeah.
imposed upon myself, not because, society said it needed to be that way. It was because I chose that I thought it should be this way.
Yeah. And it seems like it's an opportunity almost for real self-exploration, right? Like
Oh,
eh,
yeah.
having this time of year where you know that there's going to be triggers and you know that there's going to be things that come up for you. It almost feels in a, uplift way, just an opportunity to really
Yeah.
explore that and notice that like, hey, this is coming up for me and really think about what brought that up for me and why is this a thing? Why, as you were speaking, I was thinking, I wonder, why there are certain things for certain people. We had a work kind of potluck, and everyone just brought so many different kinds of foods, and it was just so fun and interesting because everyone had a different thing they wanted to bring to the table. And I just thought, how cool is this that, like, everyone feels comfortable enough to just kind of do their thing and, just show a little bit of themselves. And they're not worried so much, I guess, about
Yeah.
judgment from one another. And so that makes me think about, the other end of that. If people are really worried or anxious, maybe part of it, one potential thing is, are you really worried about being judged? Whether it's, judged by your family or the people you're going to dinner with, or maybe it's being judged by, the larger internet community, and that's why we curate everything that we put out, and it's a whole presentation, it's
Hmm.
it's so interesting to me, the whole social media part of it. But even before that, just, the people that you're coming in front of, you're coming with, this performative um, strategy sometimes, and I wonder where that comes from. Maybe you're afraid of their judgment, or maybe you just want to avoid, like you said. Maybe you're trying to avoid something, and this is what you think is the way to avoid that. And if you are trying to avoid a conversation, why? And maybe it's because you've had that conversation before and you don't want to have it again, or maybe it's a scary conversation that needs to be had, but maybe that's not the time or the place. But it's just interesting that you have this opportunity to kind of really explore all these feelings that come up.
Yeah, and I should say for all the people who are natural Martha Stewarts and it doesn't feel forced and performative to you, more power to you. We don't need you to change. We
Right.
appreciate you.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
for the 99.5% of us who are not, um, yeah, I think I think we all should take a little kind of review, right? Like, I think it's good to review kind of like the people in your life and are they helping you
Mm,
become better, not because they're useful, but because being around them encourages you to explore and get uncomfortable and push your boundaries and find new ways that fulfill you.
In healthy ways, yeah.
in healthy ways, absolutely.
Hmm.
And also the things that you do for yourself, are they things that you enjoy and, spark joy, if we want to use a Marie Kondo word phrasing,
Hmm.
right? Like, how often are we doing that for ourselves? And
Yeah.
how
Yes.
often are we encouraging others to do it for themselves? Because I think it's really important, right? Like, we don't want to be, at least I don't think we want to be stuck in a rut or doing things that moves us backwards from where we want to be for ourselves. But
Yeah.
are we taking the inventory to figure out whether or not we're on that path toward what we want to become? Like, I
Mm.
was watching this cooking competition called the Big Brunch, and one of the judges posed the question what the chef wanted to do, and he was wavering between two things. And he's like, if your ultimate goal is to do X, you need to put all your energy into doing X. You
Hmm.
don't do Y and then think, okay, well, then later pivot to X. You just focus on X. And I was wondering, are we doing that in our own personal lives? A few
Mm.
weeks ago, I posted a repost of somebody's story about how encouraging people to romanticize their lives, right? Like, light the candle when you're having dinner, even if you're having dinner with yourself, or do the things that
Mm.
you want to do that make things pretty or make things feel good for yourself, even if it's just you, or even if it's just you and your family who, you know, aren't used to doing things special every day. Make every day special, right? Like, you
Yeah.
deserve it and your family deserves it. Do something that makes it special, even if it's just lighting a candle at the dinner table. Something very simple, but it kind of, changes the mood into a way like, wow, I could have that luxury of candlelight at dinner time, and why did I deprive myself of that?
Love that. And also, while you're speaking, it came to my mind that, there's so many roles that we feel like we have to presume, and I feel it seems like the holidays are just a time that adds extra pressure to that, right? And
Mhm.
so, especially when you're coming into like your family dynamic, right? Every family has these different roles that people have played, and maybe they change over time. But the thing that stuck out the most when you're speaking for me was about you like honoring your own journey and honoring your true self, and thinking about the way that the holidays can add so much pressure, even just little things of like, I don't know, taking on a different role while you're in your family dynamic, for example, and maybe that is not your true authentic self, or maybe that's not where you are in your journey, or maybe you've been working to get away from that for years, and this
Yeah.
is a time when you start to backslide into it because of expectations of just your family, or whatever, right? Whatever societal expectations you might be feeling like, maybe you think, I have to be Martha Stewart this season. I'm not Martha Stewart the rest of the year, but for this season, that's who I'm supposed to be, right? And it's so interesting to me to think about this, because I feel like, Thanksgiving is almost like the preview for Christmas.
It is, right? Like the pregame of Christmas. You're so right.
Yes, where Christmas is just like more pressure and more expectations and so many more norms. And it's so interesting to me, because I remember, of course, as a child, it's like Christmas is way more fun than as an adult. And I think I'm probably doing it wrong. But why? It shouldn't be, right? It should be so joyful for everybody. And honestly,
Yeah.
I think Christmas is just stressful. It's just really stressful for me. And I mean, I love seeing my baby have all the fun, but all of the things that go before that, to make it happen, it's so not my normal life. It's so different. It's so opposite of the way that I live, honestly. Like, for example, I in my real life, like, I am a thrifter. I like to go to the thrift shops. I like to go to vintage store. Like, this is what I do. I like to buy used, I like to find good deals, like I like to find free things. Like this is fun for me. And Christmas becomes like this, it almost forces me into the consumer world. Not to say that I don't ever buy, I totally do. I totally buy consumer goods. But it's almost like it's not my culture. It's really
Yeah.
weird for me. It's very different. It really forces me into this, this all consumerism type of space. And I don't like that. I try to fight it and I try to find different things, but it's actually really hard. It's really hard, to buy that many gifts and do that much planning and do it in a way that's like, local or, you can't give people used gifts. That's like a norm that people don't like, but I've thought about it, like, what if I find a special gift that's like, really, I don't know, vintage and is not has that doesn't have that like stigma of a used gift. These are just things that are just one example of how it forces you almost. It forces you. And so on top of all other things, on top of living our lives, which we're expected to continue doing all the work,
Oh yeah.
being all the productive that we always have been, probably more, frankly. Like at the end of the year, for a lot of us, I think,
Oh yeah.
and from my experience, anyways, the end of the year is a very stressful time where people are trying to fit in so much. Um, and we have half the time, right? Like people want
hmm
to take off time. They want you to still do all the work. They want you to plan for the next year. And when I say they, I mean us, because we are all putting this pressure on ourselves. and
Oh
so,
yeah.
and so it just makes me go there where I'm already thinking like, it's just really interesting because I have been thinking about this already in the last couple of days. It's Thanksgiving just passed. And it's like now it's Christmas. It's Christmas season. And now we have to start, planning and doing and thinking. And there's just a lot. There's just a lot to do. And I love that you said we should be considering joy in this.
Yeah.
And speaking of needing permission, I feel like you've just given me some. And, I hope that we can give or help everyone give themselves permission to consider themselves in all of this, consider their own joy in all of this. Because at the end of the day, these holidays are supposed to be a celebration of life and love and family in a way that everybody enjoys it, not just a few, and not for some to work and some to enjoy. And so I'm going to be challenging myself to make the season, joyful for all of us, and to really think about every person getting that joy. Like I just keep thinking about the mom who, doesn't eat, just
hmm
feeds everybody else, and is
hmm
just running around and staying up all night, and it's it's not fair, for lack of a better term. And it's not healthy in my mind. It doesn't feel right. It feels like if it were up to me, it would be completely different. It would be completely communal. It would be, and maybe it is up to me. Um, but but again, it's like norms are such a tricky thing because you just fall right into them. You don't, it's what you do when you're not thinking. It's what you do when you don't have time to plan, which most of us do not. Most of us are trying to do all the things that we're always trying to do. So, it's your default, right? Norms are the default. That's what your body, your mind, your emotion, like you just roll right into those different states. And so, yeah, it is actually more work, and so I want to acknowledge that as I'm suggesting it. But also, to our topic, for those of us who need it, let's give ourselves permission to think about our own joy during the holidays, and all of the people who are usually maybe, forgotten or never had permission to think about their own joy.
And I think also give yourselves permission to realize that your gifting doesn't have to be perfect. It
Mm,
doesn't even have to exist at all. It can just be about being around other people and enjoying
mhm,
the moment. Because I will say that some of the best gifts I've received, especially from my mother-in-law, who is a amazing thrifter and vintage finder, is I like things like vintage salad tongs or serving pieces. And she always
Mm,
finds something, polishes it up, ties it with a nice ribbon, and an
cute.
ideal gift. So doesn't have to be consumerism, can be good for the world and be thrifty. But
Yay,
also
I'm gonna do
give yourself
it.
but also give yourself permission to say that, hey, what I want to enjoy about Christmas is, putting lights up, or I don't know, changing
Maybe you love to
something.
bake. Yeah.
Right, like
Get
you love to
get people
bake,
baked
or
goods. Yeah.
yeah. And it could just be about the environment you're creating too, right? It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
focused on the consumerism angle of it. It can be about the community and creating a warm, safe space for yourself or your chosen family or your blood family or your friends or your colleagues or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe you like crafting. Maybe you like making music. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like this society is there's one go-to again. And
Yep.
it's just so interesting to me that like as we talk about it, um I feel like we're giving ourselves permission to think outside the box and just to
Yeah.
really be true to ourselves in a way that you know consumer America does not allow you that. I mean, it's not that it doesn't allow it or that it's outlawed. It's that it's the last thing that you think of actually, right? Because um there's so many other expectations that are being pushed, honestly. And of course we know that, who's going to benefit from those, and why they're advertising them, obviously. But it
Hmm.
works. Advertising works. And and I think, maybe I don't know, maybe it's because we just don't have a lot of these conversations where we stop and we think about what are we actually doing? Is this what we want to
Right?
be doing? Is this true to us? Does this, make us feel good inside? Does this make us feel true to ourselves? And where are the spaces for those conversations, right? I'm so
Yeah.
proud of us for making this space, and I hope that this is a seed that will maybe hopefully spread out through other people's conversations because um we don't have to do this. We don't have to engage. We can use this time to maybe explore new traditions or old traditions. One
Hmm.
of the things with Thanksgiving is learning more and more about our native heritage. It's just Thanksgiving also becomes a trigger for me of just um historic trauma.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and I didn't know how to deal with it at first. I would just get really like I would just get really turned off to the holiday, and then get angry about it. And I really didn't even want to go. I was just like, what the why what are we doing here? What are we celebrating? And then I allowed myself to embrace that part of me, and 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 make it my own. And so now, we talk about history, we talk about native tradition when we gather as a family for Thanksgiving, um and we teach the children a little something about that. And even though maybe they're too young to really understand it, the fact that this is now a thing that we do makes me feel better about it. And so
I
being true really helps. Yeah.
it's interesting you say that. I also have issue with Thanksgiving. I
Mhm.
can't work. I don't like
Mm.
wishing people happy Thanksgiving because all I can think
Mhm.
in my head is, why are we saying thank you, colonizers? It makes no
Right.
sense to me, especially
Right.
having so many
Right.
friends who are indigenous people and
Mhm.
loving that they are finding their culture and exploring it more now than they ever have before. But how do you take both? And I think for me, I realize it's a lot like what I think of as Christmas. I like the traditional, or I guess the cultural view of the holiday that is separate from the religious view of the holiday.
Mhm.
Mostly
Mhm.
because from my culture, it's more most of the Yuletide experience is tied to pagan Swedish traditions, not Well,
Well, yeah, the
religious.
cultural stuff comes from
Yes,
that. Yeah.
yes. And I'm trying to think. I've been trying to think of Thanksgiving much like you did in a way of how do you remove what is the, let's say, historical trauma
Mm-hmm.
or problematic history
Problematic. Yeah. Yeah.
from something that in and of itself, if you view it just from, say, the cultural element of people
Right.
gathering to have food and give
Right.
thanks for what has
Right.
happened in their life, that seems completely reasonable. If
Yep.
you think of it as pilgrims and indigenous
Mm.
people joining forces, it seems more like, did they really do that? Because at this
Yeah.
point in my life, I'm not even convinced that's actually what happened.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea whether or not it happened or what it looked like. But what I do know is that, indigenous people were here long before that, and if that ever happened, when it happened, they had some amazing skill set that they had to offer, and I'm proud of it. And
Yeah,
that's the kind of history that we talked about this holiday. And I remember the first year that I really grappled with it, I just said, I think I was saying Happy Indigenous Day of Gratitude, and and now I'm thinking about the ways that that Indigenous people, or at least the ones I've been able to read about, would practice gratitude, and they would have dancing for the different crops that actually were really being celebrated originally for Thanksgiving, like corn and squash. And it's just so fascinating to me. And now I just think of it as an opportunity to really learn about history, especially because we don't have any other opportunities. That's the other tragic thing, is that, who is teaching Indigenous history
I'm
anywhere?
thankful that the tribes are doing it. But that's, how do we
Yeah,
get invited into it as a non-tribal member? I'm
right.
fortunate to have my closest friend from law school is very active in her tribe, the Cherokee, and my childhood best friend is very active in her tribe, the Delaware, so much so that she quit her normal corporate day
Wow.
job and started working for her tribe.
Right
And
on.
they are doing great things in both tribes to like continue the language so that there are still native speakers and
Yeah.
the storytelling and the traditions. And I get sent pictures of and videos from their powwows. And it is just like it warms my heart that they became so enamored in their history and their culture.
I love it. I just wish that we were in a different environment, so that, like, all these ideas came to my mind, about, just how we could actually, like, collaborate and spread it, because,
Yeah.
Indigenous history is our history, whether or not you identify as having any Indigenous, heritage. It
And it's
is
hard
like
in
it is.
Texas.
It
And it's
is.
hard
It's
in
so hard. That's
states.
exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, and now we're in Texas in
Yeah.
2022, where you're not even allowed to think about it. You're not even allowed to think about it. Like that it's going to be resisted, if for lack of any other more
Hmm.
extreme term, and maybe even legislated away. And there's just so much of a fight, and it's just wild to me because, we are choosing to tell a certain history, and from one perspective, and my baby's in school now, and this was her first year going through Thanksgiving, and I know that she was taught something. I don't exactly know what, but she said the
Oh,
word pilgrims, and I shuddered because I'm just like, what did they even tell you? I don't know, from kindergarten, and she don't know, which I guess is great. I'm like, just
I
forget
guess that
everything we
is,
just
but
learned.
because you said pilgrim, all I could think was okay, burning women at the stake because women had the
Ah.
audacity to have an opinion.
That is the legacy, right? And so,
Yeah,
but Thanksgiving puts a pretty face on it somehow. Like it's just
it does.
just fascinating. And this is when you start to learn about them. This is the first time. I mean, it's really fascinating to think about kindergarten. This is your introduction to their history, to this history, right? Of colonialism, actually. This is the first time. It really is a traditional history making of colonialism. So that's why for me it's really important. I was saying earlier, like maybe they're too young to even know what's going on, but they're obviously already getting information from other places. So it's even more important now
But
that I
are
really
they
reflect
really
on
too
that.
young? Because I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm
No,
like,
probably not.
they know what it's like for someone to steal their toy away from them.
True, true.
And I mean, I think that's a reasonable analogy to colonialism.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or even to get hurt or to whatever. Yeah, no, kids are
Yeah.
very, very smart.
Yes.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about the fact that, like, oh, I mean, this just makes me think about the fact that they're already learning history. It's just a matter of which history they're learning.
Oh,
and and how full that story is, because I don't mind there being different perspectives, honestly. I think that it's very healthy for a critical mind to be forced to grapple
oh,
with different
absolutely.
perspectives, right? And so I don't mind that. But what I do mind is there being one perspective, and it being
Yeah.
called the truth, and it being called the ultimate source, and there being nothing else. And so, then it becomes it's and there will be nothing else unless you bring it. So anywho, in general, do we have permission to make the holidays our own? And I say yes, and I wanted to share
Absolutely.
that experience because it's helped me um at least, honestly feel present, like we were talking about earlier, actually feel present in the moment, because that was one of my big hangups, where I was sitting there thinking like, this is stupid. And I would go, probably because of the expectations or what have you, but I wasn't enjoying it, and I wasn't really, really, really there, and really, and even enjoying the people there in front of me that I love. And so just another example of how this is a really great opportunity to um, see yourself, actually, and explore what is this feeling, and why, and where's it coming from, and embrace it. Don't be afraid of it. Just embrace it, and maybe feel out how you can make something your own. Make it so that your true self is okay to show up.
And I think for the my theory of the world, where you make something imperfect to make it
Hmm.
better for yourself, I now realize that after you said it, leaving something imperfect allowed me to be more present as well, because
Mm,
I was no longer thinking about all the things that were wrong, because I knew and I
right.
could identify that one thing was wrong in my head,
Yep.
and that gave me permission to be there in the moment, because I
Mm,
didn't need to think about it because it already existed
yeah.
and I didn't have to
Yeah.
create it in my head. And I think that could be helpful if, even if you're a guest, say you're a fastidious person who always wants to have their nails painted when they attend an
Mm,
event. Don't do it. You know, go with
hmm.
your nails bare and just get over it. And I think it'll help you to be in the moment, because you'll know that that imperfection exists. You can move past it and you can still have a great time.
And another little, I guess, tip that just came to mind. It's not even a fully formed, thought of advice, but it's just the thought that people get so anxious about what somebody else is going to say. Like, they're literally like playing conversations in their head before they happen.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in just in time worrying, which means I don't think about it. I try not to think about it until it's happening. Because just thinking about the future like that is anxiety, and anxiety doesn't feel good, and it's not good for your body. And so um yeah, I don't have a fully formed piece of advice, except to say that sometimes it helps me um to kind of notice that I'm already thinking about the conversations that are going to happen, and that I'm anxious about certain things or the other coming up, maybe. And even though I'm saying it's not great to be contemplating these things, some one thing that has helped me is just having a conscious decision to just, not 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 engage these thoughts, like just recognize them, kind of let them go, and say it's okay to not know what the conversation is going to be. But the other one is just having like some kind of canned thing that you can
Yes.
say. Just, I don't know what that thing is right now off the top of my head. It depends on what you're thinking. But if you can think of one thing that kind of gets you out of stuff,
I
then
have
that seems
one.
to be a trick. Oh, yes, please. Yes, great.
And it's a riff off of something from Schitt's Creek and a David
Hmm.
Rose statement of, yeah, we're not doing that right now. And it works for
I love
anything,
it.
right? Like it
That's
works when somebody says
perfect.
something improper. It works when somebody asks you an invasive question. It works when somebody says something insulting. It works when the racist uncle says something racist.
It's
It
so
works when
perfect. Oh
somebody
my gosh.
asks, when are you having kids? When are you getting married? All those
We
horrible
should have had this
questions.
conversation before Thanksgiving. Oh my gosh. That's so
Right. Like,
perfect.
I mean,
I'll write that
engage
down.
the hand motions, put your hand in front of the person and make a big circle and
We're
be
not
like,
doing that
nope,
right now.
we're not doing
Oh
that
my
right now.
gosh. Oh my gosh, my new favorite thing. I love it so much. No,
Because
we're
it's
not
not
doing that right
offensive
now.
and it's so over the
No,
top. And
yeah.
it's something that people don't expect, right? Like
And they'll
all those
laugh.
people,
Yeah.
yeah. And all those people who say those horrible things or ask those invasive questions, they'll be like, huh, what? I don't
Mhm.
understand what
Mhm.
happened. And
You're actually doing so
situation
much.
diffused.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
diffusing the situation, you're de-escalating, you're setting a healthy boundary, you're letting people know what you will and will not allow in that moment. You're, disengaging in a way that is not rude or aggressive, but is assertive.
yeah.
That's actually genius. It's such a perfect answer. I'm so glad that I started that line of thought without having any answer, and you had the perfect one to pair with. It's so good. Yes, that exactly that. So have something like that, where like I can assert myself in this situation and I don't have to be afraid. That makes it so that you don't have to worry about it and you can have just in time worrying. And when it comes up, you have something to say and that's it. You can move on and you can enjoy yourself. And one of the things that I've said too is just, um, I this is not as good as the one you just said, but I will just be like, "Oh, happy time. This is just
Also good.
this is just a happy time. It's party time," and I'll just like distract and be like, "Yeah, like we're not doing that because we're having fun right now. This is a time for us to
Yeah.
have fun and be joyful." And it really is the idea of not right now. This is not the time or the place, but I love the phrasing of it. It's so perfect. I'm gonna use that for sure.
It is a
Thank
great
you,
one to have in
Tessa.
the arsenal and it works. It works in uncomfortable work environments. It works
Mhm, mhm,
everywhere.
mhm. Absolutely. And when people and, if somebody tried to challenge you on it, they would look like the unreasonable one. You just,
Exactly.
set it up to say like, this is not the time or the place. I love it so
Hmm.
much. I love that. Yes. And so we all have permission to, walk in worry-free,
Yes.
to be true to ourselves and to reject any urges, to fall into any given norm or any given role that other people expect of us. We have permission to be present and to live authentically in every moment without having to worry about being performative or presenting this life experience to anybody else. And we have permission, to understand that things are going to come up, but use them as an opportunity to explore what that means for us and how we can address those things as opposed to being afraid of them.
Absolutely. And I think we also should note that we also should have permission to not attend events and
Yes,
to have permission to invite the people we want to invite to events if
yes,
it is means that you are choosing your chosen family over your blood family because, you know, blood means that you're related, doesn't make you family.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Be your whole self all year round. Be your whole
Yeah.
self all year round, and just like we always say, we should always be surrounding ourselves with, you know, the most positive people who lift us up every day and who we know are good for us. And
Yeah.
maybe that means that if you're going to walk into a situation that's maybe a little scary for you, maybe a little triggering for you, maybe a little volatile for you. I love that you just said bring somebody. That's a great
Hmm.
solution in my mind. Like bring that positivity with you. Maybe you need that person by your side and just don't worry about what anybody might think or say or do. Like just make it your new reality. This is what I do. I
Yeah.
bring my friend, or I bring several friends, or I have friendsgiving, or whatever it is that makes you feel like yourself again, because one of the biggest things is that we can lose ourselves in all of the stuff, and instead we can give ourselves permission to stay our true selves and make the holidays our own versus making ourselves fit the holiday.
And as Cy has given us such an excellent wrap up, it made me think of one thing that will extend this conversation a little bit. And if you're there and you feel obligated to attend, I like to play a game called This is a Social Experiment. And
Mm.
you do that by just watching the bad behavior of other people. I don't recommend turning it into a drinking game because you will get drunk really fast, but, make note of other people's bad behavior
Yeah,
or make note
yeah.
of things that people do that
Just observe.
is
Yeah.
is offensive. And sometimes it
Mm.
helps you like remove yourself from that situation so that you're observing them as opposed to participating with them. And
Wow.
that is a self-protection mechanism. But if you need to get through an event, consider playing. This is a social experiment.
This is a social experiment. It's so funny you say that because it's happened to me recently where I just have started making observations, but I make them out loud to the people that are doing them. I'm just like, oh, that was highly offensive. And
Okay.
what a rude thing to say right now. Interesting that you chose to say that. Like,
Interesting that you chose a family event to say something so awful.
right. Yeah. Or like that you chose to insult your guest. That's so strange. Like, interesting choice. I'm like, I have no filter apparently. I didn't think about keeping it to myself and just observing quietly. I've just been sharing my observations with people out
I guess I'm just thinking of the people who are
loud.
perhaps not as lovely and assertive as you are, or like myself, who's sometimes like, I'm just gonna non-engage because I don't want to waste energy on these people. So if you
Well,
want
that's
to conserve
yeah.
your energy,
Yeah. No, I fully support that. I always tell people like, don't engage. And I love this idea of a social experiment though, because yeah, I always think of I mean, I think we a lot of times feel like we are like on the outside or something, that
hmm
we're just watching these strange things happening and you get caught into it sometimes and you're like, how did this even happen? Um, but if you just like take your natural state of like just watching and thinking to yourself, and maybe you digest it later or something, and maybe you use it to have a conversation with these people later. Maybe you don't. But
yeah,
I love that one step removed because it's usually the in between where you lose the disengagement and then you somehow become engaged and then
yeah.
things don't end up as great. And so I'm playing with fire. So take Tessa's advice for sure.
And also, I should say, give yourself permission to leave, right? Like, give yourself permission
Oh,
to leave
yes.
in the middle of an
Yes.
event.
Yes, that. Absolutely that. And maybe even find like maybe have a thing ready. Like I remember I had cousins who would always go to the movies at the tail end of I think Thanksgiving or Christmas. I can't remember which, but I always thought like, "Oh wow, they're leaving early." And I thought it was kind of like not scandalous, but just like, "Oh, like that's interesting." But now I'm like, that's genius. Like like I'm gonna be here for 2.5 hours and then that's it. I have a movie to catch, like that's
hmm
freaking genius. And so depending on who you are, maybe you love staying all night long and drinking with your tias or something. Good on you. Like maybe that's your thing. Maybe you can only take people in small doses. And that's again, it's really like self-care. And so if
Yep,
you already know that about your situation, set yourself up for success. Like, have an excuse, have
absolutely.
somebody call you. I love this plan for people.
Yeah. And if you don't, I mean, also take the French exit, just walk on out without saying anything. Totally. Because Because you know what?
Also acceptable.
You don't owe explanations to anyone
You
when
don't.
you are
That's
taking care
right.
of yourself.
100% that. And I mean, especially for the holidays. I feel like we should have like a survival guide for the holidays.
We should. Maybe that should be next episode. All right, survival guide for this time of the year, or really any time of the year.
Yes, but I mean, it's applicable for literally every day. And it's the
Yeah.
exact same advice that I give people about disengaging. I'm like, if you don't know how to disengage, literally, this is my advice. I literally tell people just turn around and walk out the
Walk
door.
away.
Walk away. Like, what's gonna happen? Nothing.
Hmm.
I love it so much. And I really hope everyone finds joy in the holidays, whether it's, having a second holiday just for you or the one you love the most, or maybe like you get to like have a little spa day right after Christmas,
Yeah.
or maybe you like need to be in nature. That's another thing. I feel like we're always indoors. Like it's just God, there's so many opportunities to make the holidays your own. This has really opened up my mind, and I'm always looking for a way to make Christmas especially different because I don't really like it that much. I need to find ways where I like it more. But I love this opportunity. It feels really freeing for me personally. So I want to say that as always, I'm so grateful for you, Tessa, and our whole Uplift community for providing and offering this space of freeing thought. Really, it's an opportunity to free your thought and free yourself from all of the invisible pressures, that are there, that are always there, and think differently about yourself and your life and the holidays and every expectation that's out there, and just having the opportunity to explore that has been really, really special. Thank you.
Thank you all. And if you need someone to give you permission, find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook,
Mhm.
and I will
Mhm.
gladly give you permission to take care of yourself because you need to take care of yourself. That should be the number one
100%.
priority.
Always, always, no matter the time of year. Absolutely.
So on that note, as always, thank you so much, Cy, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Tessa. Goodbye, everyone.